Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's Mike Oakes here of the Read, Write, Mike podcast, and this is episode 4. Right now, we're focusing the podcast on the vocabulary curriculum that I have been developing. And today we're going to get into it and talk about what do you do when you introduce the vocabulary words. Now, we've talked about how to introduce a word bank and how to navigate the front matter of the curriculum and how the story behind the curriculum. And today I want to tell you the steps for what to do when you start introducing your vocabulary words one by one. Now, a lot of different vocabulary experts have various ways they suggest for introducing words. Michael Graves has some good ones. I prefer the method that is put forward by Beck, McKeown, and Kukin from their book, Bringing Words to Life. And so more or less, I'll try to emulate and tweak and sort of make my own their steps. But in essence, what you want to do when you are introducing vocabulary words are these 3 steps. The steps are essentially to provide a context so the kids can remember the word, to give a kid-friendly definition, and then to do what is called an example, non-example game. And I call the game playing yay or nay. And even in some of my games, I like to teach vocabulary. It gives me an opportunity to teach kids the meaning of the words yay or nay, which becomes pretty manifest right away, right? But here are the reasons why for these 3 steps: providing a context, giving a kid-friendly definition, or playing yay or nay. Number 1, you want to provide a context so that kids can have a way to remember the word, so that the word is memorable. They have something that they can hang it onto in their mind that will help them sort of retrieve it quickly. And there's a couple of ways to do this. Beck, McKeown, and Kukin recommend connecting it to stories, which makes a lot of sense because they recommend that you get your words from the books that you're reading. And moreover, providing a narrative context is really powerful because we are storytelling creatures. Stories have been one of the things that we've evolved to do as human beings over the course of centuries, for tens of thousands of years. And so incorporating stories into helping kids remember things is going to be very helpful. And I also go further. I also will, in the nonfiction units, will connect the words to text that we've read, so that they aren't necessarily stories, but it's still connecting it to a text. But one thing I've been thinking about playing around with is seeing ways that you can connect these words to maybe class stories, because those are narratives too, and those might be powerful ways for kids to remember the words. As I mentioned a few episodes ago, if you're introducing a word before you've read it, one of the ways that you can give a context to the word is within a story that you've read, but also think of a class story that it's occurred. And I think I used the word envious, or maybe we'll see if we can use the word today to think of, like, what's a class story that you could use to connect this word to before you have the book story to do that with. And then the next thing you want to do is give a kid-friendly definition. And this makes a lot of sense too. We don't want to give standard dictionary definitions, which also have circuitous definitions like sarcasm, the state of being sarcastic, or standard dictionaries often have definitions that you need to know vocabulary to know your vocabulary, which makes it difficult. Kid-friendly definition makes a lot of sense, but also follows the research. Research around teacher clarity, which seems like common sense. The clearer we are, the more apt kids are to learn. But research around teacher clarity says that we want to make sure that we are kind of teaching bottom up, not top down. And what they mean by, and I get this work from John Hattie, Invisible Learning for Teachers, I believe. And in this bottom up learning, what you want to think is, how is this child understanding what I want to convey, as opposed to the child must learn this thing. And if you're trying to put yourself in the kid's mind, that's empathetic work. It's also speculative work because you don't actually know how they're perceiving what you're saying. But testing it out with your language is going to be helpful. And remembering what it was like when you were the age of the child you're teaching is also a great way to sort of empathize and also speculate. And also, crafting your language in easy ways that you think kids will understand. So the vocabulary words are defined in ways that, I think are pretty understandable. But if you could find ways to make it even better for your students, by all means, do so. One thing I do know is when I revise this curriculum, I always look back at my definitions of words. And I'm like, oh man, that could be way better. So if you can improve on that, I invite you to, and let me know how you've improved it. And so that's step 2, providing a kid-friendly definition. And then the last step is to play what's called an example, non-example activity, or I call play yay or nay. And example, non-example activities are excellent after you've taught any content, anything that you want kids to learn. And then you basically say, okay, now I'm going to give you some examples or non-examples, and you have to tell me yes or no. Do they fit or not? Thumbs up or thumbs down? And that's just a basic way for kids to start identifying the things that they just learned by saying what it is versus what it isn't. And that act of comparing and contrasting is also a great way for kids to start remembering the words. So it's an excellent activity. One of the things that you'll know is the activities will take kids on a sort of a journey to learn the words at a more deep level. And this is one of the lighter levels, one of the shallower levels is like, I taught you a word. Now I'm going to give you examples that may or may not fit the word. Tell me whether they fit or not. So now that I've shown you these steps, and remember the 3 steps are provide a context, give a kid-friendly definition, then play a yay or nay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what it looks like in action in one of the units, one of the stuff that I've handed out to view, which is the Up the Ladder Reading Fiction Vocabulary Guide. Okay, so if you're watching on video, you can see the shared screen. If you're listening, you might check out the free example that I passed out through email links in the past few weeks. And I'm looking at day 2 of Up the Ladder Fiction. And no worries if you don't have a copy near you, but I'll read it out loud so you get a sense of it. I'm going to go with let's go with the word frantic, and I'll just show you where those steps appear. So remember, the first step is to provide a story context or a context, right? And so for frantic, it says, in the year of the dog, that's the read aloud that goes with Up the Ladder Reading Fiction. In the year of the dog, Pacey's mom tells the story of a man frantically banging on Pacey's grandfather's doctor's office. All right, so that's the first step, right? This is something that happened in the book that you'll notice that you can remember, and here's the word being introduced. Now, some of you might be like, well, Mike, the word is frantic, but you said you have this different form of the word at a different, like it's frantically. I use it interchangeably. I try to, a lot of books are written in past tense, and so I'll try to write in present tense, just like what's the root of the word. But in my teaching, I will use all the different sort of tenses and forms of the word so that kids get a sense of that, how the word is used, right? I'm not going to teach it explicitly. We're just going to practice it in our speech with one another, but you'll get a sense of it by using it and seeing how it is. So now, after you've introduced it to the story context, you give the kid-friendly definition. Here it is. When you are frantic, you act in a wild or uncontrolled way because you're scared or worried. Okay, so I got this definition. I love to use Collins online dictionary. I like to try to tweak them so it makes sense, and I want to make sure that the definition is fitting the way that the word is being introduced in the book. So that's step 2. And then we play the yay or nay game. And I say, okay, now let's play yay or nay. Say the word after me, frantic. That's always a nice thing to do. Like, that could be one of the steps, like have kids say the word. You want them to have a feel of it in their mouth, hear what it sounds like. If I say anything that goes with the word frantic, wave your hands in the air like you're wild with fear and say frantic. If I don't do anything. But either way, explain your response. So here is the yay or nay, and you invite kids different ways that they can respond. Now, here are the ways that they would respond. And one way is to provide gestures. And pilot teachers who've worked with this love the gestures, and they said more gestures, please. So in the revisions, I tried to put as many gestures as possible. Sometimes it doesn't always work for a word that's like a concept, or it just doesn't fit. But if you can, use a gesture. Or one gesture you can do is just thumbs up, thumbs down. That's a simple gesture, I mean, yay or nay. Or you can just have them say the word. Say the word or don't say the word. Sometimes if the word has a nice opposite as an antonym, I'll say, if, for instance, I could have written it like this. If I say something that goes with frantic, wave your hands in the air like you're wild with fear and say frantic. If I don't, remain calm and say calm, right? Because that might be an antonym of frantic. That's another thing that you can do. And then here you provide the example, non-examples. Now I just provide 3, right? And 3 may or may not be enough. But the reason I provide 3 is because I want to keep this brief. It's just a quick thing that you can do. If you want to provide more, by all means do so. Once you get a hang of this curriculum, you'll be able to come up with some of these just off the cuff and just real improvisationally, and that will be more meaningful if you come up with them. And and you may not love the ones that I come up with, because the ones I come up with, I try to think of like what might be funny or weird or interesting to kids, and you might be like, I don't know if I want to share the one about this gross thing, right? And so change them. Like this is your opportunity to add or change or revise. And so the ones I came up with said, when you have to finish a school assignment over the weekend, right? And you'd wait for the response. Now, what's interesting is it doesn't matter whether kids give you the response you expected or not, whether they get frantic and they go frantic, or if they stay calm. What's key here is that they show each other the meaning of the word. So for this first one, when you have to finish a school assignment over the weekend, some kids might be like, I'm frantic because I waited till the last minute and I would rather play and it's driving me crazy, right? And then other kids will say, calm. That's fine. I have plenty of time to get the project done. A lot of projects are fun, so I wouldn't be frantic, right? The point is not that they give a response that you would have expected, but they show that they know what the word means, which is what is really lovely about a lot of these activities. Is there's not necessarily a right or wrong. The only right or wrong is, do you know what the word means or not? That's the right or wrong, not did you respond in the right way or wrong way. So it provides a lot of creativity, flexibility, and for kids to show their personality, and for them to show their deep knowledge of the words, because sometimes kids who are really sharp will kind of give an opposite response than you would have expected, and they'll explain it in a way that shows a deep knowledge of the word. All right. So the second example is when you see a snake slither in the garden, right? Some kids might be frantic, some might not be frantic, right? And they can explain their response. When you hear a dog barking at you, again, some might be frantic, they might be scared of dogs. Some might be, that doesn't make me frantic, I love dogs. So the point is to listen into their responses as they're turning and talking during this time to see if they're being accurate. And then a nice little thing you can do afterwards is you can invite kids to start generating their own examples. Now, these are activities that we'll do later on in a bend, because to generate your own examples of a word shows a deeper knowledge of a word, but you can start introducing it. So like it says in the activity, what are some other things that might make you or someone else frantic? Turn and tell a partner. And then the last thing to do is just to remind kids of what word means: acting in a wild and uncontrolled way because of fear or worry. Let me hear it. Frantic, because you want to hear kids saying the word. And that's a key tip too, is when they're playing any of these games that I'll introduce throughout the weeks, you want to hear kids use the words in their mouth, that they're not only sharing the meaning of the word, but they're saying the word as well. And so, colleagues, that is the first activity that you'll do with any vocabulary word that you introduce. And remember the three main steps. There are a lot of other things tucked in there, but number one, the first is provide a context, either from a text or a story you're reading, or from a class story. For example, we could have said, last week when the bee flew into the room, we all went frantic, right? Frantic means you can also use a story context for something that actually occurred in the classroom. So these steps are, again, introduce something within a story context or a text context, helps kids remember. Give a kid-friendly definition of a word, because thinking of bottom-up teaching, how are kids understanding what we are trying to convey, is a top 10 influence on student achievement. And number 3, play an example, non-example game, or in the case of this vocabulary curriculum, play a yay or nay game that helps kids identify what the word is and what the word is not in context and examples that you provide. Okay. I hope that gives a little background, a little context, and a little of the reason why things go as they do in the introduction of each vocabulary word in the curriculum. It's my hope for you that you have a great day, a great week, and we'll be back again next week with other kinds of ways that you can teach kids to identify the word at a more shallow level. We'll talk about a game, maybe one that's called Which Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda, and Would You Rather are two other great games that allow for kids to learn a word at a very basic level before we dive in more deeply. All right. Take care, colleagues. Be well. We'll be back again together soon.